The older woman, Fazza, can't forget a royal love, mystery, poetry, English poetry. He stands in the quiet halls of memory, a prince shaped by desert winds, a soul carved by golden dunes. Yet even the endless sky of Dubai cannot hide the shadow of one presence, the older woman he cannot forget. The royal love mystery that breathes beneath his silence. She walks through his thoughts like a calm night wind, soft yet unshakable, a figure wrapped in the grace of years. Not youth, not glitter, not the expected story the world imagines for a prince, but a truth deeper than diamond light, a maturity that held him like a spell of peace. Her voice still echoes over the hidden corners of his heart, not in words, but in the way she once looked at him, a look that saw all of him, prince and poet, leader and lonely wanderer, warrior and wounded child, a look that made him feel human, not royal, not unreachable, just a man searching for someone who understood the weight of his destiny. He remembers the first moment she stepped into his world, not as a stranger, but as a presence he had waited for without knowing. A calm step, a gentle aura, eyes that held the long history of a soul that had lived deeply, eyes that taught him that age is not a number, but a library of experience, a soft desert library of lessons, risks, losses, hopes, and the courage to love without fear. Around them, the palace walls watched silently. The corridors carried the hush of an impossible story. A prince drawn to a woman the world would never expect. A woman who carried the gravity of years with elegance. A woman who knew how to calm storms within him, storms he never admitted to anyone. She taught him the language of stillness, the art of steady breathing, the power of walking slowly, the beauty of letting the heart decide without asking permission. He speaks her name only inside himself, never aloud, never in public, for the world would not understand, for they always imagine youth in the arms of royalty, never wisdom, never a woman who lived enough to teach a prince how to feel. He carries her memory like a hidden jewel, placed beneath layers of royal duty, a jewel no crown can replace, a secret treasure that glows only when he is alone. In the quiet of early morning, or under the trembling silver of night, sometimes he wonders if she knew the depth of her mark, if she understood how her presence rewrote the corridors of his future, how her silence shaped his decisions, how her absence carved empty spaces in his days. He remembers the warmth of her hand, not as a lover, not as a secret queen, but as a guiding star, a comfort, a fire, a destiny he could not follow, a chapter he could not complete, a book he had to close even as his heart refused. There are stories the world hears, and there are stories only the soul keeps. This is the second kind, a story sealed in the golden heart of a prince, a story written not on paper but on breath, a story between a desert wind and a woman of time. He walks the city lights of Dubai, but beneath every glow, every towering building, night settles over the desert, a soft curtain drawn across the endless sand, and he feels her again, not in form, not in presence, but in the gentle weight that memory places on his breath, a reminder that love does not disappear. It only changes its doorway. He walks through the palace garden, where moonlight touches every leaf, where fountains whisper like old storytellers, and he feels her steps beside his own, those calm, steady steps, the steps of a woman who walked life with courage, who carried her years with strength instead of fear, who moved with the dignity of someone who learned to heal her own wounds. He remembers how she would stand by the garden walls, listening to the wind, understanding it more deeply than anyone he had known. She said nothing, yet her silence carried meaning. Her stillness carried comfort. Her presence carried the peace he searched for since childhood. He closes his eyes, and in the dark he sees her smile. Not youthful, not playful, but full of stories, full of lessons carved from time. A smile that made him believe that fate was not the enemy, that destiny could be gentle when guided by the right soul. She once told him that love is not the fire that burns quickly, but the ember that glows through the years. He carries that ember still, inside a hidden corner of his chest, a warmth he protects, a warmth no crown could ever offer. He thinks of how she touched the world, quietly, beautifully, without demanding attention, without needing the shine of youth. Her beauty was the kind that lasted, the kind that came from wisdom, from forgiveness, from a heart that had survived many storms and still remained open. They shared only whispers of moments, stolen from the pressure of duty, moments that felt like water to someone who had walked through too many deserts, moments that taught him how deep a connection could run, moments that made him see life through a softer lens, moments that shaped him more than he ever admitted. Now those moments are ghosts, drifting through his nights, touching him with the echo of what was, calling him with the quiet strength of what might have been. Sometimes he walks to the far edge of the city, where the skyline meets the sky, and he stands there, letting the wind sweep across his face, letting the night carry her memory across the dunes. He wonders if she stands somewhere under the same sky, feeling the same pull, the same lingering ache, the same echo of something unfinished. He knows the world would question such a bond. They would not understand a prince drawn to an older woman, a woman who did not fit the fairy tales they created for him. But the heart writes its own stories, and his heart wrote hers into every hidden page. There is a room in the palace, a quiet room, still, filled only with light. It was the place she once stood, the place where they shared a moment of truth, a moment with no words, a moment that changed him. Even now, years later, he steps inside, and the air still feels full of her presence. He reaches out, holding nothing, yet feeling. Dawn rises over the desert, soft golden light spreading across the dunes, and the prince wakes with the same quiet ache, the echo of a presence he cannot name aloud, the memory of the older woman who shaped the chambers of his heart, a memory he carries like a secret sunrise, always returning, always glowing, always hers. He steps onto the balcony of the palace. The warm breeze touches his face, and he feels her again, in the stillness, in the way the world slows, in the way the morning seems to pause for him, as if waiting for him to whisper her name into the wind. He does not speak. He only remembers the calm wisdom in her voice, the strength she carried in every breath, the grace she held in every gesture. She was a story older than time, a story written in the language of experience, a story he never finished reading. He recalls how she taught him to see beyond the surface, to feel beyond the tension of duty, to love beyond the expectations of a royal life. She showed him that age does not limit love, it deepens it. strengthens it, shapes it into something rare. When she walked beside him, he felt the weight of the world lift from his shoulders. She became his refuge, his calm, his quiet truth. A truth he still seeks in every sunrise. He moves through the palace halls, where the sunlight spills across the marble floor, and he imagines her footsteps beside his own, graceful, measured, full of purpose. She never needed diamonds to shine. She carried her light from within, a light he still chases through the corridors of memory. He enters the royal library, rows of books standing like silent guardians. Stories of kings, stories of battles, stories of victories. Yet none compare to the story that lives only in his heart. The story of a love that time tried to separate. A love that still shapes him in every breath. He touches the spine of an old book. Her favorite? The one she once read beneath the shadow of the palace courtyard tree. She sat there, wrapped in peace, wrapped in wisdom, wrapped in years that added beauty, not burden. He remembers how she looked up at him that day, a soft, unfailing gaze, a gaze that read every unspoken thought, a gaze that reminded him he was more than a title, more than a prince, more than the expectations of millions. With her, he was simply human, simply a heart searching for warmth. He steps outside again, into the wide-open desert. He walks without guards, without ceremony, just a man tracing the edges of his longing, and he feels the desert breathe around him, a breath that once carried her scent, a breath that still whispers her story. He sits atop a dune, letting the sand shift beneath him, letting the sky open above him, and he begins to understand some loves are not meant to be held. They are meant to be carried softly, silently, endlessly. He closes his eyes, and she returns, not as a shadow, not as a ghost, but as a feeling, warm, gentle, unbroken. He sees her smile. He feels her hand. He hears her silence, a silence filled with meaning, a silence that taught him the language of the heart.